Jesus, what did you dig them back up for? The new bypass. It's going to take half the graveyard yonder. So before they lay the road, we have to lift them and plant them in the new munical ground of Borough Road. There must have been some sites, well, they've been dead years. First one were interred in 1836, so most of the coffins were well rotted. Soon you tried to lift them, they just folded like wet cardboard boxes, and everything spilled out into a heap. Jesus, you must have a strong stomach. I'm just brewing up. You'll want a wet one when you're done. Oh tar, trouble with this unit, it's being too near the window. Direct sunlight makes them overheat. Shouldn't take long though. Are the others out? Digging? Aye. They're working up the top side, look. That's where they're going to plant James Hudson, the old mayor. Topside, you see, is where all your knobs are. Doctors, solicitors, aldermen. Bottom side is for the working folk and paupers. And that's where the new road's going through. Aye, that's where they all had to be dug up. Disintered. Aye, bad business this disentering. You see some things so bad it makes you fare poorly. Some of the older graves, well, we opened coffins and found that they'd moved. The bodies had moved. Well, sometimes years ago, people were buried alive. Not deliberately, of course. Spec somewhere in comas so deep they were certified dead. They buried them, of course, then they woke up. No air, no light. They'd be suffocating, trying to fight their way out. But 6 feet down, no one would ever hear them. There they screamed, fought, clawed at the lid, breathed up all the oxygen, and then, well, they died. What did they look like? Oh, terrible. You see, natural salts in the soil preserve them. Only turns them bright yellow. Apart from that, they look the same as the day they died. Like this. They just froze like that. Like statues. Jesus, that's awful. Oh, I've seen worse, lad. What was the worst you've seen? That was 2 days ago when we disentered Rose Boswick. When we opened the lid we saw... No, it's too bad, I can't bring myself to... No. Old Walter Welton, my uncle was a gravedigger when they planted him. Summer of 1946. Walton was the fattest man in the country. 20 stone or more. It took so long to build a coffin that the meat flies got to him. When we opened his coffin up, it were like opening a box of long grain rice. Couldn't see him. Just found a mound of maggots, all white and hard like dried rice. Then it rained. My God, I'll never eat rice pudding again. Look, there's one. Must have trotted in on me boots. Oh, Christ. Awful. Then there were people riddled with worms, plagued with rats, even rabbits. You see, the rabbits had tunneled down and built nests in the coffins. And when we found baby rabbits scampering about inside the empty rib cages, we found expensive jewelry, pennies on eyes. Of course, when the eyeballs dried, they stuck to the pennies. So when you lifted the pennies, you'd clean out their eye sockets. Then there were people with mouthful of maggots and... You know, I can't get the last one we dug up out of my mind. Rolls Burswick. You mean that really awful one? The worst. The worst ever. And I've seen some terrible things in my time. What happened? Well, promise you'll never tell anybody? You can trust me, mister. Remember the old factory down by the river? Yeah, that's the one that got sealed off with those radiation warning signs. That is because during World War I, that's where they painted luminous faces on watches, ships' instruments and such like. Then what they used to make things luminous was radium, and radium is radioactive. They took girls 14, 15, 16 years old to apply the stuff to watch faces. Of course, nobody knew what radiation did to you. Most of the factory girls were dead before they were 20, just rotted away. Rose Burswick worked there 5 years. She'd use a little brush to paint the radium on. The trouble is, it dried quickly, so she'd lick the brush every couple of minutes to keep it moist. Each time she did that, she must have swallowed a few flakes of radium. Jesus, it's a wonder it didn't kill her. It did, at least that's what they said. In 1935, Rose Burswick was buried. She was 36. But she was a mess, living that long after. But that's not the worst of it. Like I said, 2 days ago we opened up the grave. What did you find? Well, we lifted the coffin. It were intact. It was then I noticed where the lid met the coffin there was like this pale yellow trim around the edge. Funny, I thought, but reckoned it was just a bit of mold. Anyway, when we came to prise off the lid, it just flew off like the top of a jack in the box. Jesus, Johnny. And inside it were full, ram-jammed to the brim. Full of what? Rose Burswick. They say she weighed 6 stone when they buried her, but when we opened that coffin it were like opening a carton of ice cream. There were just this big block, bright yellow. It were as if it had grown and grown until the coffin side had stopped it growing any bigger. But then, pressure inside had been so great, it were being forced through the crack between the lid and the coffin, making that yellow trim. Of course, we just thought it were some kind of fungus, so we tipped it out. It came out like banana jelly mold. On the grass was that yellow block, coffin shape. What had happened to Rose Burswick? Oh, that's just it. It was Rose Burswick. Christ, how? Mutation. You see, the radiation caused her to mutate in the grave. The coffin had become her second womb. And she gestated, evolved into something that, well, wasn't not human. Did you touch it? Not on your Nelly. We ran like hell, but when the cemetery board found out, we had to go back to it. We found it had changed, just sort of a soft mound, and it had grown. Tuesday was that sunny day, scorching hot. The seat must have brought it on, and it were growing fast. Jesus, then what? We tried to lever it into a skiff to take it down to the creme, burn it, but it had taken root. Mutation caused what were left of the intestine to grow and worm into the earth like a long yellow snake. It ended up us cutting it through with a shovel. It screamed. Pain. Real pain. God, it were a nightmare. Then There it were, up and moving. What were left of her arms and legs had turned into like swollen yellow stumps, and back to front feet and hands that had twisted up into hooves like, oh, I tell you, revolting. It were growing dark and we were trying to get into the hut. That's when we noticed the worst part. I held a torch to it and looked at it close up. This yellow stuff were almost transparent, like yellow jelly, and I could see inside it. What'd you see? Terrible. Just under the surface, about 4, maybe 6 inches down through this thick jelly, I could see clearly Rose Burswick's face, or what was left of it. Wide, staring eyes coming out of their sockets 3 inches or more like red raw sausages. The tongue, long, thrusting out the mouth, up through the skin until the top wiggled all pink and wet above the surface. And the mouth, opening, shutting like this. I reckon she were trying to say something. Call for help. You know, that expression on her face will stick in my mind forever. Sheer terror, like a continual state of shock, as if she knew what had happened. Mutation. What happened to it? Well, it kept growing, so we had to find a way to stop it. And how? Sub-zero temperatures. Why else do you think that a cemetery store would keep a freezer? Look! No! No. Suit yourself. I've got to go, I'm late. Hey, my leg is giving me hell. Hey, you've forgotten this. You know, as long as the freezer's working, nothing will happen. Old Rose Burswick's frozen solid, like a block of ice cream. How long since the freezer packed in? Let's see. I saw some water on the floor yesterday morning, but Bill said don't bother, it'll only be... Jesus, it's been off more than 24 hours? You're lucky it didn't thaw. You've got it on fast freeze, on full. Nope, I haven't touched it. Thought you did. It's still switched off. Jesus, Johnny, just pray we're in time. Get out of here, lad. Ah!